If you're thinking about moving to the Portland metropolitan area and you've never been here before, or maybe you haven't been here too many times, this video is for you. I'm going to give you a greater sense as to what the lifestyle is like in the Portland metro area, but also outside of Portland. I'll talk about some of the things and places and activities that people travel to that live in Portland but are just outside of Portland. And big news coming to Portland. There was a major change announced just a couple days ago. I'm going to talk about that at the end. If you're moving here, you're definitely going to want to know about that. All this starts now. Hey everyone, Seth Marchant with the Home Team Brokers here. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new to this channel, living in Oregon, and you'd like to learn more about what it's like to live in Oregon, make sure and hit the subscribe button, tap the bell, that way you'll be notified every time we drop a new video, which is every week. And if you're thinking about taking the next steps to moving to Oregon, as licensed real estate brokers, as much as we like making these videos, we'd love to help you move here. You can call us, text us, email us, or even click the link below in the description to get into our calendar to schedule a Zoom call with us. Typically best for people coming from out of state, which I know a lot of you are. All right, so in this video, I've heard from a lot of people over the years that move here that Portland is a lot different than anywhere else they've been to. So I want to try and give you a greater sense as to what it's like before you come here, or like I said, if you've only been here a few times, you probably don't have a full sense of as to what Portland is like and everything that it has to offer. So I'm going to kind of quickly cover all that in this video. All right, so the first thing is going to be the airport, right? You're probably going to fly here. Some people are driving here, but probably going to hit the airport at some point. So it's in North Portland, and maybe technically northeast, but so right here in North Portland. So if you're out here on the west side or down south, you're going to be a little bit farther away from the airport. And I know that's important to a lot of people that travel. So let's start with kind of like Portland proper. Now, a lot of people that move here, quite frankly, aren't necessarily moving to like downtown Portland, which would be over here, or the east side of Portland, which was kind of like a lot of this was the original development of Portland. Portland is broken up into three counties: Multnomah County, Clackamas County, and Washington County. You can sort of think of Multnomah County as Portland proper, kind of just this area roughly right here. Clackamas County is going to be down here to the southeast. It's pretty big. It actually extends way, way, way out here. Now, I don't think that people out in this area necessarily consider themselves living in Portland or the Portland metro area, although technically this is Clackamas County down here. So think of Clackamas County down here is in the southeast, and then the other county, Washington County, is going to be southwest, so over here. A lot of people that move to Portland, quite frankly, tend to move to Washington or Clackamas County. You don't get as many people moving to Multnomah County right now. And in fact, Multnomah County, Oregon itself, the state of Oregon, is a migratory state. So we get more people moving here than we have moving out of the state. And that's always been true of Portland, with the exception of last year. Their population actually went down 0.1%, so just a tiny bit. But what happened is you have a lot of people from Multnomah County moving out into the suburbs in Clackamas County and Washington County. Now, the people that live in Washington and Clackamas County still really enjoy going to Portland. So that's why I'm going to point out some of these locations here in Portland that if you move here, you're probably going to visit these things at some point. These are kind of like the major spots to hit. Maybe it's just once or twice, maybe it's frequently, but usually at least once. So people in Washington and Clackamas County do tend to travel to downtown Portland for these types of things. You might be anywhere from a 20 to 30 minute drive, depending on where you're coming from. So first thing, OMSI, Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, down here on the southeast side. Great place to take the kids. So you're going to see lots of kids when you visit OMSI. They have a lot of attractions that are constantly changing. Right now, they have an attraction for Marvel Comics. We've got the Portland Art Museum. So we've got an art museum, probably just like most major metropolitan areas. They do also have a lot of rotating attractions that are really great. Then you got Washington Park, which is going to be out here to the west, where you also have the zoo, which is very popular. And you have the Japanese gardens, and then you also have the rose gardens. If you didn't know, Portland is the city of roses. These rose gardens are world renowned. So this park is a great park too. As you can kind of see, there's a lot of trails that go through this park. So if you like to walk, jog, this is a great place. Definitely kind of like the crown jewel of downtown Portland is Washington Park. You do also have Forest Park, and let me switch over here so you can get a feel just for how big Forest Park is. It's over 5,000 acres. For comparison, Central Park in New York is around 800 acres. I believe this is the largest park in a major metropolitan area in the country. Now, we have a ton of parks. That's one of the great things about Portland and Oregon. We have tons and tons of parks. But if you want something really forested, Forest Park is going to be a good place for you to check out. Next, we have Pioneer Square. Let me zoom in a little bit here for you. Now, I haven't been, I'm out in the burbs. I'm in Clackamas County, so I don't live downtown. I haven't been here too many times over the past few years. I see Fried Egg and Love. There's a few food carts there. That's one of my favorite food carts, actually. This area's been a little bit rough since the pandemic in the last couple years. Pretty dirty, a lot of trash, a lot of people street camping. So this was once a really great central point for people that were going downtown Portland to shop, hang out, check out. You got a lot of shopping around here. The Pioneer Place Mall is right next door, but it hasn't attracted as many people in the last few years because of some of the problems they've had. But if you're somebody that's going to move here, and again, I'm going to get to something at the end of this video that's going to really address some of the problems that Portland's had recently. So if you're thinking about moving to Portland, even though it's maybe not in great shape now, at some point you'll definitely want to check out Pioneer Square. A lot of people come here to check out Powell's Books. I think it's the largest bookstore in the country. So you can kind of see it's right here downtown, not too far away from Pioneer Square. Maybe you go there once or twice. Maybe you go there a lot. But usually check it out once. If you're just checking it out once, probably order the rest of your books from Amazon and Audible. Next, you have the Moda Center. This is where the Portland Trailblazers play. So this is over on the east side, just over on the other side of the river from downtown. You also have right next to it the Memorial Coliseum. So this is where the Portland Trailblazers used to play before the Moda Center was built. It was originally called the Rose Quarter. Moda is a health insurance provider, and so currently the Rose Quarter is being referred to as the Moda Center. I point this out because there's a ton of events here, not just Portland Trailblazers. The Portland Winterhawks, the hockey team, play at the Coliseum, and then all of your concerts, monster trucks, events like right now we're in October, so we have Halloween coming up. They do like haunted houses, or they have in the past at the Moda Center. This is going to be your sort of biggest event center near downtown Portland. So at some point you'll probably be checking this place out, regardless of what it's for. Again, whether it's for a Blazer game or a music concert. So these are kind of some of the bigger attractions and things that people that live in Portland tend to visit. But by all means, this does not cover everything. This is just a short kind of quick list for you to check out if you weren't aware of these things. There's way more things to check out in Portland, but these are kind of just some of the big ones. If you're watching this video and you happen to be from Portland and you want to weigh in on some of your favorite activities, feel free to put those in the comments below. So shopping, malls, let's talk about that real quick. There's a handful of malls here. One of them, Lloyd Center, you'll see here last on the list. It does say online that it's still open, so don't want to let that fool you, because they did actually close down the Lloyd Center recently. It was sold, and I'm not sure exactly what the new developers, I think it's unclear as to what the new developers are going to do. You have Pioneer Place, so this is going to be your mall for people kind of around downtown Portland. Washington Square is going to be in Washington County, so people out west are going to be shopping at Washington Square. You do also have Bridgeport Village, which is actually an outdoor mall that's newer. Maybe that was built like 25 years ago, something like that. So a little bit further down southwest. And then you have Clackamas Town Center, which is over in Happy Valley. So that's going to be your mall for people in Clackamas County. So those are the big malls. Malls don't tend to get as much traffic as they used to, especially once the pandemic started. But it seems like traffic has picked up a little bit over the past year or so, especially with Bridgeport, actually, because Bridgeport being an outdoor mall, obviously people feel a little bit safer during the pandemic with outdoors and shopping outdoors. So I don't know that. So Bridgeport has still been, when I've been there at least, pretty consistently busy. Next, I want to talk to you about our fun centers. These are places that typically have things like bowling, rock wall climbing, laser tag, maybe go-karts, stuff like that. There's a handful of these throughout Portland. Some of these are, I think, a major chain. Some are just local, like a Langer's, I think is just local. A Big Owl's, for example, I think is a chain. I've seen other Big Owl's before. Langer's I've only seen in Sherwood. We do also have a Top Golf out this way. Didn't show up when I searched this specific term, but Top Golf is something that's a little bit newer to the Portland area and has been really, really popular. So like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the original development is on the east side. So the east side does tend to revolve a little bit more around bowling, it seems like. You've got some older bowling alleys, whereas the west side is kind of more new bowling alleys, big screens, go-karts, laser tag. The entertainment centers out west tend to be a little bit newer and bigger. But as you can see, you have these kind of entertainment centers all throughout the Portland metropolitan area, whether you're going with kids or, Langer's has a great sports bar, and they actually do, I don't know if they do this anymore, but it was only a few months ago that I noticed this, but they had craft beers for $2 on Tuesdays, which is just crazy, unheard of. You're gonna pay $10 for the same beer over somewhere around Portland on the east side here. So there's a lot of things to draw people in, not just people with kids. Now, on the note of food and alcohol, switching over here to looking at some of the food carts. As you can see, there's a lot of food carts. You have places around Portland like Cartopia, for example, where you'll have like 30 food carts. And the food carts scene, as you might know, is huge in Portland. And the great thing about it is it has really expanded out into the suburbs. A lot of the suburbs in Clackamas County and Washington County now also have their own food carts. So it used to be, if you wanted to go to food carts, you'd have to go to like downtown Portland or over to the east side of Portland, whereas now a lot of places have food carts. Milwaukee has their own food carts. Happy Valley has their own food carts. Oregon City, West Lynn, Beaverton. A lot of these towns throughout the west side do. Lake Oswego does not have food carts yet, for whatever reason. I would imagine they would at some point. I don't know. Maybe food carts might not be the right vibe for Lake Oswego. It's a little bit, I don't know how ritzy, swanky, upscale. Doesn't really kind of have the food cart vibe. So maybe that's why we don't have food carts in Lake Oswego. But that is very popular. Food is huge here in Portland, as you probably know. So we've got a lot of great food here. And the great thing about it is if you're not moving downtown Portland, it's really not just limited to like downtown and the east side, which it kind of used to be. A lot of the great food has expanded out into the suburbs. All right, next. Now, this feels a little bit random, but people sometimes they do ask about this, and we have a lot of this around the Portland metro area, which is golf courses. If you're a golfer, or a lot of these golf courses are just country clubs, you don't necessarily have to be a golfer. Might just be going to hang out. Some of these places have like jogging paths, for example. Maybe you're just going to a golf course to go for a jog, but if you are a golfer, you're going to have a lot of selection in the Portland metropolitan area. Another thing that I've noticed that some people aren't familiar with when I ask them, some people that are moving to Portland, they often mention the craft beers and the breweries. We have one of the best sort of craft beer brewery scenes in the country, not just in Portland, but throughout the state. And we do have something, there is a company called McMenamins that brews their own beer. And if you're a Portlander, if you're somebody that's grown up in this area, I think just about everybody has been to a McMenamins at some point. So this company is really, really unique in that they sort of specialize in taking older buildings and transforming them into restaurants. In some cases, there'll be like a venue or a popular place, or like in this case, up here in Northeast Portland, it says McMenamins Honors Bar, but everybody refers to it as the Kennedy School, because they took an old middle school and they converted that into a bunch of different bars and restaurants. So each classroom is converted into a different type of bar or restaurant. And then the gymnasium is like, I think they have a movie theater in there now. I haven't been in there in quite a long time. Again, definitely something that you want to check out at least once. But McMenamins has all of these really, really unique properties all across the state of Oregon, mostly condensed around the Portland metro area, that are super cool. The beer is really popular, so they have great beer. The food is pretty good. You know, the service can be a little bit hit or miss. Now, a lot of these the McMenamins are going to be condensed around Portland, but they're actually statewide, and there's some in Washington now as well. One of my favorites is actually over here in Gearhart. So this is actually an old hotel that they took and converted into, there's a golf course now there. It's still a hotel, so they still have accommodations, and there's a restaurant, there's a bar downstairs, there's outside seating. It's a really, really cool place, and pretty typical for McMenamins just to have just a totally unique property with some great food and great drink. So if you're moving to Portland, you're probably going to check out McMenamins at some point. Another one, actually, I'm not seeing, actually here it is, Edgefield. This is also a very popular McMenamins that a lot of people go to because it has a venue there, and they've attracted a lot of great artists over the years. So great place to go see, listen to some music. I think there's maybe like 50 McMenamins or so throughout Oregon and southern Washington. They do have a thing called the McMenamins Passport as well, where if you visit every McMenamins, I believe you get a 2-night stay in one of their hotels. And all you have to do is simply visit and get a stamp. Don't even have to eat there. Just buy their passport. I think it's maybe 10 or 15 bucks, something like that, and visit every location, and you'll get 2 nights free at one of their hotels. All right, let me take you outside of Portland a little bit here, and let's get outside of the town, and let me kind of give you an idea of people that live here, what they typically do, maybe kind of not necessarily on the day-to-day, like we've kind of talked about some of these activities, but more on the week-to-week or month-to-month or even year-to-year, some of the places that people around the Portland metropolitan area travel. So we have Mount Hood, which if you're like around this area, Happy Valley to Mount Hood is right about an hour. If you're over on the west side, like in Beaverton, it's going to be closer to 2 hours, but definitely driving distance for everybody in the Portland metropolitan area. Mount Hood is the most climbed mountain, I believe, in the country. And of course attracts a lot of skiers and snowboarders. Timberline Lodge, if you ever saw the movie The Shining, some of those shots were for Timberline Lodge. So this is where you would be going, is you'll probably check out Timberline Lodge or Government Camp. There is some skiing and snowboarding. There are a few lifts around here, but there's also a handful of restaurants and stuff like that and stuff to do around here. A lot of trails too. To hike around here. Mirror Lake Trailhead is always really, really busy. Get there early if you ever want to visit there. But if you live in Portland and you like the mountain, you've got Mount Hood right next door. Another common thing for Portland, people that live in Portland, is the Columbia River Gorge. So the Columbia River Gorge is a national attraction. There's tons of trails up and down the Columbia River Gorge, and it's a beautiful place. A lot of people actually visit Oregon just to visit the Columbia River Gorge. So the Columbia River, the mouth starts right here in Astoria, and then the Columbia River actually goes all the way up here in Washington to George. There's a town called George, and the Gorge Amphitheater is also something that people that live in Portland do sort of semi-commonly travel to. This is probably a good solid 4 hours away, but the Gorge Amphitheater is probably one of the most picturesque amphitheaters in the entire country. So if you like music, one of the bigger attractions every year is Dave Matthews Band. A lot of that stuff has slowed down since the pandemic, of course, so I'm not sure what schedules look like these days, but definitely worth going to at least once if you like music, if there's somebody you liked, if there's an artist you like to listen to that ever goes to the gorge, that's definitely one of the coolest places to catch a concert in the country. But back to the Columbia River. So anywhere along the Columbia River, there's a lot of attractions all along the Columbia River. Again, starting at Astoria. If you don't know the history, and I hope I'm not misremembering too much of this, but what I recall from grade school is that Lewis and Clark initially came here looking for a passageway that will, and I'll show you some video here too. You can, if you actually go to Astoria, a map, obviously doesn't do it justice. This waterway, this is huge. It's massive, so it looks a little bit more like, a sea or something rather than a river. But Lewis and Clark were hoping that this river would actually go all the way through to the east, because before we had the Panama Canal right down here. If you were out east and you wanted to get out west, you would have to go all the way down past the tip of South America and then come all the way back up again. Really long trip, right? And so Lewis and Clark and whoever else was planning this out were hoping that there was a way to get from here through the Great Lakes all the way out west and have to save that trip from going down south past South America. Now, I remember learning this in grade school, and as I think back on this, it kind of begs the question if they really believed there was a passageway out west all the way out east. It seems like they would have just tried to find that passageway over here somewhere in the Great Lakes instead of having to, sail all the way down South America and come back up again. But when Lewis and Clark arrived here, it was with what they saw, they thought that they had found that passageway, but the Columbia does not, as we know, go all the way out east. But if you're somebody that lives in Portland or moving to Portland, you're probably going to take a trip up the gorge at some point, maybe to Hood River, especially if you do any kind of wind sports, water sports. That's huge in Hood River. I believe it's the windsurfing capital of the world. I'm going to find a lot of that just right down here. That's where all the windsurfers are. I've also heard it referred to, for you people in California, the Santa Cruz of Oregon. It does kind of have like a Santa Cruz vibe to it. So if you come here, make sure and check out the gorge. Only one thing I would say about the gorge is that they recently started requiring some trailheads for you to get passes to walk some of these trailheads. In the past, you never had to have a pass to access any of these trails. You do have to pay for parking. Typically got to be $5, but so if you're going to walk one of these trails or hike one of these trails, make sure and check ahead of time. Make sure that you don't need, or if you do need a pass, to get one ahead of time. Next we have Bend, Oregon, Central Oregon. So this is actually one of the top retirement destinations in the country, and it's actually been one of the top destinations for people to move to from Portland. This is about a 3.5-hour drive from Portland. This is sort of a desert type region. It's known as the high desert. A lot of this elevation is somewhere around 3,000 feet. So Oregon does have a desert as well, and some people that live here, I think, might refer to it as the desert. Sometimes we get phone calls from people. I've had people call before and say, "Hey, I'm in the desert," and I usually assume that they're in California. But I don't always know that. So for you California people, when you say the desert, just know that we're not always going to know for sure that you're talking about California, because we do kind of have our own desert as well. Now, obviously, southeastern Oregon is all desert, and most of Nevada is desert. But people from Nevada never say they're from the desert. Same with Arizona. I've never heard anybody say they're from the desert. Have to assume whenever somebody says that they're talking about this area down here. So, but like I said, just so you know, if you're from California, we do have our own desert as well. So it might be a little bit confusing if you call us and say that you're from the desert. So this area has really grown up over the years. Mount Bachelor is also maybe the second most famous or popular mountain in the state of Oregon. Great skiing and snowboarding. And this entire range right here, from Sisters, the Three Sisters, South Sister, North Sister, and then Broken Top, Mount Washington, Three Finger Jack. When you're out here this way, this provides a really, really picturesque backdrop. So Bend is really popular. There's also a town just south of Bend called Sun River that is sort of a resort style town. A golf course, pools, biking, stuff like that. Also an outdoor mall. A few good places to eat and drink. And then another kind of popular place around here too is going to be Redmond, just north of Bend. Not too much else. Maybe Sisters as well. Black Butte Ranch, also another popular place. There's been a lot of ranches like a Bersada Ranch, for example, that are sort of like these high-end, high-scale ranches that are kind of out in the desert that typically have a golf course, pool, horses, stuff for the kids, things like that, that are pretty popular. Eagle Crest is maybe not one of the more expensive ones, but Eagle Crest Resort, also a popular one for people in Portland. So a lot of people in Portland that live around the Portland metro area do tend to kind of take, like, this is a little bit too far for a day trip, but like a weekend trip or 3, 4, 5 days, people in Portland do tend to vacation in Central Oregon a lot. Next, I just put Astoria here, but really what we're talking about is the Oregon coast. The Oregon coast, you'll see license plates from all over the country, especially on the southern Oregon coast. You tend to see a lot of license plates from, especially the east. But people are traveling all across the country to visit the Oregon coast. Maybe one thing that's a little bit different about some of the other coast that's nearby, if you look at Washington, they don't have kind of like the same coastline, right? You can drive the 101 the whole way, and for the most part, as you can kind of see, you're going to be along the coast with the exception of like Tillamook right here. You got a pretty long stretch where you're outside of the coast, but for the most part, you feel like you're on the coast, and it's like a coastal drive all the way from Astoria up north to Brookings down south. And it's probably one of the most beautiful drives, Highway 101 from Astoria to Brookings, right down here, southernmost town on the Oregon coast. It's supposed to be one of the nicest, most picturesque drives in the entire country. So a lot of people that live in Portland do take a day trip to the Oregon coast or longer. It's just about an hour and a half or so roughly from Portland to Astoria. A lot of people are going from Portland, they're taking 26, and then they're going this way towards Astoria, Seaside, or they'll go south down Cannon Beach, Arch Cape, Manzanita. It doesn't show up on here, but Manzanita, another popular one that people are traveling to. Otherwise, you're forking off 26 to 6 here over towards Tillamook and down towards Lincoln City. Some people in the south might take 99 to get to Lincoln City, but a lot of people in Portland do visit the Oregon coast. That's one of the many great amenities of living here in Oregon. And if you're somebody that moves here, I'm sure you'll visit the Oregon coast as well. If you have questions about these things too, I'm trying to kind of quickly go over some of these things, not to bore you too much, but if you have questions about these specific towns, of course, you can always reach out to us. Paul and I both do know the Oregon coast very well. We do sell houses there as well. We've helped quite a few people buy houses on the Oregon coast as well. Next, I have Dundee. Now, Dundee, I'm just using Dundee sort of as a town that's representative of our wine country. Oregon does have a world-renowned wine country, the Willamette Valley wine country. I chose Dundee because Dundee is sort of in the heart of wine country, and when you go through the town of Dundee, you really feel it too. A lot of the town is sort of like catered around the vineyards and the people that come here to do wine tasting. So you can see what we're looking at, how many vineyards there are around this area, and they're not just around Dundee, but that's where you're going to find most of them. But if you look at that, quite a few vineyards. Take you a long time to visit all of those. And Dundee's 45 minutes, an hour, depending on where you're coming at from Portland. So great little day trip thing. If you're doing a little bit more than tasting, you might look at a lot of people. There's a lot of limo services and driving services too that cater to wine country. All right, now there are quite a few other things. Like I said, I don't want to make this video too long and drag this on, too long, but there are quite a few other things to visit in Oregon, or if you live in Portland, that people visit. This one's pretty far out of the way. As you can see, this is a long ways away from Portland, but I put it on here because Crater Lake is something that is also world renowned. It is something that people travel to visit from all over the world. And if you live in Oregon, if you live in Portland, usually at some point you try and make a trip down to check out Crater Lake. All right, so I hope that gives you kind of a better sense as to what us Portlanders, what we do, what sort of amenities there are, where things located and kind of what the lifestyle is like here. A lot of people's lifestyles are sort of going to be dictated, on the types of activities they like to do. If you're a skier or a snowboarder, you're probably going to want to be close to Mount Hood, so you don't have to have a really long commute over here from like Hillsborough or Beaverton, right? Believe it or not, some people do move here just for Willamette Valley wine country. People have told me that before. So you're probably going to want to be down here on the south, down south if that's important to you. Or same thing with the Oregon coast. A lot of people have second homes on the Oregon coast. Great day trip spot. So if you don't want too much of a commute, you might want to be over on the west side if you're somebody that probably plans to travel to the Oregon coast pretty often. All right, so now for the last thing that I mentioned, major change coming to Portland. One of the biggest things that we get asked about, and that you probably have heard about in the news, is the crime. What's going on with the crime? What's going on with the homelessness? Regardless of what news channel you watch, it's not a great situation. There's no way to really sugarcoat it. Portland has not done a good job of handling the situation. Nobody's happy about it. And so finally, just a couple of days ago, Portland announced that they're going to, and this has been kind of one of the biggest complaints, is the city camping, the urban camping. I think this was largely probably due to a lawsuit that they were hit with, a class action lawsuit. The Americans with Disabilities Act hit Portland with a lawsuit that said, hey, our people with disabilities are unable to get around because you have all these tents in these tent cities that are blocking the sidewalks, so people in wheelchairs, blind people, kids are having to walk out into the street because they can't use the sidewalks because the sidewalks are blocked. So Portland recently announced that they are going to be banning camping, and I think it's an 18-month process they said that they're going to use to sort of transition people. Now the kind of crazy thing about all this is, according to KGW, which is one of our local news stations, there's about 700 camps in Multnomah County in Portland. Now that sounds like a lot, but also according to KGW News, there's currently about 1,600 shelter spaces that are currently open, and there's 2,400 total. I guess all of them are not currently open, but there's 1,600 that are currently open, and the mayor has requested that the maximum number that are available, which is 2,400, all be open. So it seems like we have enough space to get everybody off the street. I don't know that everybody that's on the street necessarily wants to get off the street, because then you gotta, play by some of the rules, and we've heard, homeless people say that, that's part of the reason why they don't want to seek assistance, because they want to do their own thing. So we'll see we'll see how this turns out, but I think this will make a big difference. As somebody that's lived here my entire life, I can say that people from Washington County and Clackamas County really enjoyed traveling from the burbs to go downtown Portland, whether it was just to walk around, to hang out, to go get some food. And that's just not the case anymore. Downtown has, in a lot of cases, largely in a lot of places, been a ghost town, because people are not traveling downtown anymore because they just don't feel safe. You also hear a lot of people too complain, rightfully so, about the trash and the filth, because it is really bad in some places. And there's resources to clean those things up, but it's a real quick Band-Aid, that just gets ripped right back off again. So there's a lot of trash throughout Portland. And this should help to clean up some of Portland. So hopefully you're going to see less needles, see less trash, and hopefully feel safer and actually be able to navigate around the town safely, especially if you're a disabled person. So I think this will have a really dramatic effect if they're able to pull this off on the city. You're going to start to see more people coming downtown Portland again. You're going to start to see some businesses come back. A lot of businesses have left Portland, but if they can revitalize the area, maybe you'll see some businesses move back in. And so this is really, really welcome news for, I think, everybody. There's not a single person that I've ever heard, regardless of what your politics are, that don't think that this is a problem. We all feel for the people on the streets, and most of them, from what we can see, don't want to be there. Some of them appear to not mind being there, but a lot of them don't want to be there. And we want to be able to have resources for those people to be able to get the help they need. So I think this is Portland kind of putting their foot down. And again, probably the hand was forced by the lawsuit, but this is Portland saying, hey, we're going to have to go back to playing by the rules. We're going to have to go back to having a city that's clean and that people feel safe in. And that's going to start with cleaning up the streets. So if you're concerned about moving here, again, a lot of people are moving out into Washington and Clackamas County. Not too many people are kind of moving to the places where you kind of see some of the problems that we're talking about here. But if you are maybe moving to one of those places, and like the east side of Portland, this is where a lot of the problems are happening right now. If you are maybe planning to move to one of those areas, just know that things probably are going to get better as long as Portland can kind of stick with their plan to ban the urban camping. And also too, you see this headline here, despite there being apparently enough beds to get everybody off the street, they do plan to build 3. Right here it just says 500 capacity, but they actually plan to build 3 500 capacity homeless campuses. Don't know where those are going to be or what that's going to look like, but the point being is that Portland plans to get people off the streets, get them the help they need, and get things back to normal again. So regardless of what news channel you watch and how bad they say Portland is, and to be fair, some of it is really bad in some places right now, we do expect things to get better. And sort of the tide has turned a little bit in Portland, so that was really good news, and we really look forward to seeing how that shakes out. Like I said, it's been announced that it's going to be an 18-month plan. As I understand it, they've already started cleaning up some of it. Paul, the other person from this channel, is actually out in Northeast today filming, and he said a lot of it looks really, really good. Another thing that was kind of I don't know if a black eye on Portland, if you will, that was sort of telling about our problems over the years, is we've had some big events over the years that attract a lot of people. For example, LPGA Tour comes here every year, and the golf course that they go to is over in Portland. It's so bad driving there and around the golf course that they relocated it here down in the south to West Lynn this year at the West Lynn Oregon Golf Club. We also had the MLS Cup in 2021 here, which was over here, and they did a lot of cleaning up before the MLS Cup. So it kind of reminded me of if you ever been to somebody's house that maybe isn't the cleanest, and they're or maybe that was you back in high school or college, when you had a messy dorm room and you were having somebody over and you're scrambling to clean up the place, for your guests. That's kind of Portland. Is when we've had guests over the past few years, Portland scrambles to clean the place up for our guests, but unfortunately they don't clean the place up for their own residents. So that's what it kind of feels like now. Is they're finally deciding to treat the residents, the people that live here, like the guests, in that we want to clean the city up for the people. So really great news, and that should be good news for you if you're thinking about moving to Portland. If you have questions about moving here, if you have questions about anything I've talked about in this video, or if you want to weigh in on this video, feel free to comment, but you can call us, text us, email us. If you want to schedule a Zoom with us to talk about moving here and kind of get to know us a little bit, you can click the link below in our calendar in the description section. Just click that little more button. All of our contact information is below, and we'll be here for you when you move to Portland, Oregon. All right, take care, everyone.